I would like to start with our first theme, and that theme is education and career. And during and after completing our bachelor's in psychology, we will explore our career options. And yeah, we would like to start by asking some questions. And the first question is, what got you interested in sexology, and how did you start your career?
Okay, so it's very nice to meet you, first of all, and it's always great to talk about these things. I wish I had listened to others talk to me when I was, in your age. Well, as you probably already know, when somebody's doing undergraduate studies in psychology, sexology is not usually included in the curriculum. So I had no contact and no familiarity with sexology, but I was very much interested in health psychology. I was really attracted by the mind-body interaction. So how do psychological factors, emotional or behavior factors impact our physical health? So then I did a master's degree in health psychology. And then one of my first jobs was to work as a researcher in the field of sexual health. So at that time, I conducted a big study, which was actually more of an epidemiological study. So I had the opportunity to look at the data, and I saw that approximately 40% of even the young people, like from 18 to 40 years old, would report a sexual problem. And that's a very high percentage. And at the same time, what was also very interesting is that these people said that they would like to, to speak to a professional about these problems, but they hadn't done so. At the same time, in those days, I saw that the sexologists that were available in my place, in my country, were very, very few. So on one hand, I knew I had the data of, a high prevalence of sexual problems, even in the young people, and at the same time, very few sexologists. And it made me actually decide that, hey, okay, this is the field I want to work on clinically. So from that point on, I invested a lot in my clinical training. And since then, I've been only working as a sexologist.
Thanks so much for answering. Then I have another question. Would you say there are certain skills and qualities that are important for sexologists to have?
Well, I could think of several, but I think I would prioritize a quality. It's not really a skill. I think it's more of a quality, which is, I would say, being modest, humility. I think that this is very, very important, especially when you do clinical work, because when you have this kind of attitude as a person, it means that, you become an active listener. So you listen actively, there is empathy, you recognize the limitations that you have and your scientific field has. So I would say being modest is a quality that I would prioritize. I think that modesty is quite crucial, especially in clinical practice, because you want to have a relationship with your clients and with your patients that promotes a sense of equal value and an equal contribution in the therapy too.
Thank you. Then I have another question. How would you say sexology relates to other disciplines in psychology?
Well, this is, I think, what is really fascinating in sexology, that it synthesizes so many different domains. So in order to be a good sexologist, I think you need to be familiar and to be efficient in different psychotherapeutic methods. At the same time, you need to have a maybe knowledge in domains of like health psychology or psychosomatic medicine. You need to also know a little bit on neuropsychology. But then also, in order to be a good sexologist, you need to have some knowledge in urology and gynecology, endocrinology, because you need to have a good understanding of all these fields in order to synthesize information.
Thank you. Do you face any challenges while working as a sexologist?
Of course. I mean, I've been working as a sexologist for many years. I think it's probably around 20 or something. I think that I would say that there are two challenges that we all have, that we're all facing. One is the challenge of continuously improving. I think it's really, really, really important that we commit ourselves in continuously learning and improving. It's kind of like, you need to train yourself all the time. And it can get very tricky, because if you think about it, and what I will say now applies to all psychologists, not only sexologists. The clients that I see every day are the clients that are happy with my services. The ones that were not satisfied with the work I did with them, these people are not going to come back to me. So my impression is biased because I only see the people that are happy. So this can become quite tricky. Right. So I think we need to continuously keep in mind that there are people that we may not have managed to, to help as much as we wanted to. So we need to continuously improve. That's number one. And number two is that, our scientific field, of course, it has several limitations. There are many things that we don't know. So I think that in my point of view, a big challenge is when we also have clients that are dealing with a problem, a sexual health problem, that scientifically we still don't know how to treat. So these are cases that can be quite challenging in how to deal with.
Do you see yourself working as a sexologist for a long time?
Well, hopefully, yes. I'm not planning to do something else, but at the moment I have two sort of directions that I want to focus on, probably the rest of my life. So one is my clinical practice, my private practice, which has always been there, and it's a part of my job that I love, and I of course I want to continue. I love it because it's, when you have clients and you do therapy with them, psychotherapy, and imagine working with, for example, men that are dealing with a sexual dysfunction, or women that have problems like that. I think that there is an important reward for me. And the reward is not only when you do your job well and they're treated, that's of course great, but there's also another reward, and it's the fact that through therapy, because you deal with vulnerabilities, human vulnerabilities, you also continuously sort of feel connected to your own vulnerabilities. And I think that this is a great reward, and something that I think is great to, it's great to have in your life, such opportunities. The second thing, though, that I am doing, and that I am planning to continue to work on, is something that is educational. So a few years ago, just before the pandemic, with my dear colleague from Italy, Francesca Tripodi, we founded and we developed an educational platform. So it's an online educational platform that actually brings together the top experts in clinical sexology from the world, and they actually give us the best of their clinical experience, the best of their knowledge. So this platform, I would say, has all my life's work in it. The same goes for my colleague. And it also has all of life, the work of so many people. We have more than 50 experts in the moment lecturing there and sharing their clinical experience. So this is something that I am really passionate about, and hopefully I will continue working on.
And is there anything in particular that you're currently working on?
Well, these are the two things that as I said, I'm working on the platform all the time, because we are taking a boutique approach. So we're very, very careful in selecting who our speakers are and what kind of material we're going to ask and we're going to produce. So for example, we have like state-of-the-art lectures, we have instructional courses, there are inspirational talks, which are fantastic because you can, because we interview legends in the field. We have clinical case discussions. So imagine having a top sexologist with, massive experience telling you exactly how he would work in a specific clinical case. So producing material there is really nice. It requires a lot of careful work, and but it's very creative.
In respect to your career, what professional principles have characterized your work?
Well, I think that what has characterized my work was, I think there's two things. One thing is that I would always sort of try to go that extra mile in anything that I did. So I would say that I would always try to do my best in everything that I did. And the second thing is, as a principle, is that if I had a role, so for example, my role could be the role I have in my clinical practice, right? So a therapist, or my role could be as a member of a scientific committee, for example, in a big scientific organization, or in every case, the role that I had, the professional role, is what I would serve, and that would be my main priority, and not my personal benefit. So I would always prioritize what I need to do in my role, and that would not be influenced by my personal benefit.
Thank you so much.
Hi again, I'm Kamilla, and we're generally interested in how ethics is related to sexology. And with that in mind, my first question would be, what do you think the ethical guidelines are for practicing sexologists?
Well, the ethical guidelines for sexologists have been published, and you can have a look at them. They have been published by the World Association of Sexual Health, and they're published on the internet. So you can have a look. They're published and they're available for someone to see. But just in brief, I could tell you, for example, that sexologists need to have appropriate professional training. Of course, that's number one. They need to continuously commit to ongoing education. That's very important. You can be a sexologist, but to be professional requires you to continuously educate yourself. Of course, we also need to operate within our expertise. So when we're dealing with a case that requires management beyond our expertise, we must refer. And of course, we always need to practice according to evidence-based data when this is available. So these are some of the basic principles according to the WASH, to the World Association of Sexual Health.
Thank you. So for our last theme, I chose social changes and how these can interact with the field of sexology. Sorry. And for example, would you say that recent changes in social views and beliefs like feminism or sexual diversity have influenced the discussion around the subject of sex?
Yes, definitely. There have been changes. I mean, first of all, we see that, there is more acceptance, and that's very important and very positive. However, I think we still have, a long way to go. But I think activism has raised awareness for various issues, and this is something that we can also see in our clinical practice, because it has made it easier for people to seek help. The internet has also played a very important role here, in addition to that. And then we've also had some important changes. So, for example, gender incongruous is no more considered a mental health problem, right, according to the ICD. So this means that some problems that used to be considered mental health problems are no more considered mental health problems. So there are changes, and this is positive. And hopefully we will, I think that in the next years, things will continue to change. I believe that we will sort of have more, depathologizing certain problems. And I think that also in the future we will have hopefully more acceptance from the general population on different issues.
Thank you. And have you noticed any differences between cultures or religions in the aspect of sex and their approach to that?
Of course, I mean, our culture, the religions, the place, where we are, our background, right, our education, all these influence our sexual behaviors. I'm not saying that it's the only thing that influences us, but they do influence us. So think of the norms, right? What do I expect to be normal for a man or for a woman, or what would I expect for a woman 40 years old to be normal and whatnot? These are influenced by our culture, but of course it's not only the culture, it's also our personal experiences, right? So it's more of a blend, but culture, of course, is important. And now, in cities, like in big cities, like, for example, think of London, think of Athens or Rome or Amsterdam, we have people living there from, with different cultural backgrounds. So when you're working as a psychologist, it's quite likely that you will work with people that have different nationalities and different cultural backgrounds. And you may not be familiar with the characteristics of each culture, but I think that when you're well trained, you are able to deal with these issues. So you're able to learn more from your clients and to help them.
Of course, thank you. And if there is space for change in our current society, how do you think that we as students and future psychologists could facilitate this change?
Well, I would say number one is keep learning. Just keep learning, be involved in learning. And your generation has the internet. So basically you can be at home and you can learn from top experts that are in another continent. You don't need to travel. So this is an incredible asset. And you can also select, you can choose who you're going to learn from. In the old days, we used to learn from a few people, a few colleagues, right, in our place. But now that doesn't exist anymore. You can learn from anybody you want, and that's amazing. So I think one is learning. And then you can participate, of course, you can participate in scientific organizations, you can participate in activist organizations, but even your university, there are things that you can do in groups that can facilitate sexual health.
Thank you so much. That was it for our themes. Do you have any advice for us or for future students?
For
or for
psychologists,
investors?
for young psychologists, my advice is two things, I would say. Number one is, as I said, don't stop learning. It's like training. It's like if you were a basketball player, you train every day. Just don't stop training. Start working as soon as possible. Don't wait. Just start working as soon as possible, but continue learning.
Thank you so much. Is there anything you would like to add, or?
No, I think that's pretty much it. I hope you find what attracts you. There's so many fields in psychology that can be really interesting and attractive. I'm very happy you chose sexology.
Yeah.
And hopefully, we will have sexology being taught during the undergraduate studies. We're working on that at the moment, and hopefully we will achieve it for the next generations.
That would be really great. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Have a good day. Bye-bye.
Goodbye.